You're exhausted. You want to sleep. But the moment you close your eyes, your brain turns into a loud, obnoxious roommate that won't shut up. The overthinking ramps up. The what-ifs multiply. And suddenly you're more awake at midnight than you were all day. Here's the part nobody tells you. This isn't a sleep problem. It's a mind problem. And Buddhism cracked the code on this centuries ago. Monks learned how to silence the mental noise that keeps you up at night, and once you understand their method, anxiety loses every ounce of power it has over you. 1. Understanding the nature of the mind. If you want to calm your mind, you need to stop romanticizing it and start seeing it for what it actually is. Most people walk around acting like their thoughts are sacred, meaningful messages that must be analyzed, decoded, or feared. That's the core delusion. Buddhism makes it painfully clear. The mind is not a wise inner voice. It's a machine constantly firing impulses, memories, opinions, fears, and leftover conditioning. It doesn't care about your peace. It cares about activity. It cares about stimulation. And when you finally lie down in a quiet room with no distractions, the mind panics because it's addicted to motion. That's the real reason anxiety kicks in at night. This idea sounds philosophical, but it's brutally practical. During the day, your mind is flooded with tasks, conversations, screens, noise, responsibilities. It has endless things to latch onto, but at night, all of that is gone. Silence exposes the chaos that's been running underneath the entire time. Your mind doesn't suddenly become anxious at night. It's been anxious all day. You're just too busy to notice. When the external noise stops, the internal noise becomes impossible to ignore. That's why the moment you lie down, the thoughts start firing faster. What if tomorrow goes wrong? Did I forget something? Why did I say that earlier? What if everything falls apart? It's not because these questions matter. It's because your mind refuses to be idle. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a wild monkey jumping from branch to branch, grabbing anything it can find just to stay moving. And you've spent your whole life letting this monkey run the show. You believe every thought. You wrestle with every worry. You analyze every mental narrative like it's your responsibility. No wonder you can't sleep. You're treating random electrical impulses like urgent life missions. When you deeply understand the nature of the mind, something critical shifts. You stop taking your thoughts personally. You stop thinking your mind is you. You stop assuming that every thought carries meaning. And once that separation happens, anxiety loses 90% of its strength. Here's the blunt truth. Thoughts are not messages. Thoughts are not warnings. Thoughts are not prophecies. Thoughts are not your identity. They're mental noise produced by a system that evolved to detect threats in a world full of dangers. But you're not being hunted by wild animals anymore, yet your brain still overreacts like you are. So when it senses uncertainty, it fires worry thoughts. When it senses boredom, it fires distractions. When it senses silence, it panics and fires anything it can grab. The only reason anxiety feels so powerful is because you fuel it. You treat a thought like a problem that must be solved. You follow it, argue with it, try to escape it. Every time you react, you reinforce the idea that the thought was important. Buddhist teachings cut right through this by showing you that the problem isn't the thought. The problem is your attachment to the thought. Imagine someone outside your window yelling nonsense. Would you take every word seriously? Would you run outside to debate them? Of course not. Yet that's exactly how you treat the nonsense inside your head. And here's the real punch. The mind loves when you react. Reaction gives it energy. Reaction gives it attention. Reaction keeps it alive. The second you stop reacting, meaning you observe thoughts without grabbing onto them, the mind loses its grip on you. This is the beginning of real mental freedom. When you watch your thoughts the same way you'd watch clouds passing in the sky, you stop feeding the storm. You realize thoughts come on their own and leave on their own. They don't need your help. They don't need your resistance. They don't need your involvement. Buddhists figured out long ago that you can't control the mind by force. You don't fight thoughts. You don't suppress them. That only makes them louder. Instead, you understand the mechanism behind them. The mind wants to think. That's its job. Let it do its job without letting it dictate your emotional state. At night, this understanding becomes your weapon. When anxiety tries to take over with racing thoughts, you don't panic. You don't follow the narrative. You don't try to fix the storyline. You watch it. You let it move. You let it fade. And here's the surprising part. When you stop giving thoughts emotional fuel, they collapse on their own. They burn out, because a thought without attention is like a fire without oxygen. Understanding the nature of the mind teaches you one of the most liberating truths Buddhism ever offered. Your mind will generate thoughts until the day you die, but you don't have to chase any of them. You don't have to obey them. You don't have to fear them. The mind is just the mind, an automatic machine firing conditioned patterns. You are the one who sees it. You are the awareness behind it. Once you truly get that, not just intellectually, but experientially, nighttime anxiety starts to crumble. Thoughts lose their authority. The mental noise becomes background static instead of a threat, and silence finally feels peaceful instead of terrifying. This is the foundation. Without it, every other technique is pointless. With it, everything else becomes 10 times more effective. 2. Breaking attachment to thoughts. If Lesson 1 showed you what the mind is, this lesson shows you exactly why it controls you and how to break that control. Every bit of anxiety you feel is fueled by one thing: attachment. You don't just have thoughts, you cling to them. You treat them like they matter. You emotionally charge them, argue with them, fear them, and follow them like they're instructions. That's the mistake, and it's the only reason a random thought at 11:47 p.m. can hijack your entire night. Buddhism hits you with something most people never realize. A thought has zero power until you give it attention. Zero. Thoughts don't cause suffering. Your attachment to them does. The mind throws out a worrying thought, and instead of letting it pass, you latch onto it and start building a whole mental movie. What if tomorrow goes badly? Becomes, what if I screw everything up? Which becomes, why am I like this? Which becomes, I'll never fix this. That entire downward spiral was built from your habit of grabbing thoughts and turning them into stories. The original thought wasn't the problem, you were. When monks talk about non-attachment, people misunderstand it as some kind of emotionless detachment or apathy. That's not it at all. Non-attachment means you stop treating thoughts like they're truth. You stop kneeling to them, stop trying to solve them, stop giving them authority they never deserved. You hear a thought, but you don't let it drag you into its drama. You watch it rise. You watch it fall. You don't bite the hook. Here's the brutal truth. Anxiety thrives because you constantly take the bait. Your mind throws out a worry, and you immediately grab it, analyze it, and feed it. You don't even notice you're doing it, it's automatic, a lifetime habit. Breaking attachment isn't about resisting thoughts, it's about breaking this autopilot reaction. A monk can sit in silence and watch thousands of thoughts come and go without being moved by any of them. That's not because monks think less. Their minds are just as busy as yours. The difference is they don't attach. They don't add weight to a thought. They don't turn it into a problem. They let it exist without letting it dominate. Think of thoughts like cars driving past your house. Attachment is you running outside, chasing every single one, screaming for an explanation. Non-attachment is standing at your window watching them go by. You're present, aware, but uninvolved. That's the shift you need if you want anxiety to lose its grip. Nighttime anxiety is the perfect storm for attachment. Why? Because everything is quiet, and your brain is itching for something to do. The mind throws out a thought, any thought, to stay busy. And you, out of habit, follow it. You think the thought is important because it feels urgent. But urgency is just the mind's trick to pull you in. It's not truth. Once you understand this, you stop falling for the illusion. Buddhism gives you a simple process that destroys attachment. Observe the thought without reacting. Don't label it, don't judge it, don't analyze it, don't chase it, just watch it. This sounds simple, but it's the most transformative practice you'll ever do. When you observe without reacting, you're basically telling your brain, I'm not playing this game anymore. The mind hates this at first because it's used to running the show. It will try louder thoughts, scarier thoughts, more dramatic thoughts, anything to pull you back. But if you hold your ground, something incredible happens. The mind starts to calm down on its own, because without your attention, it has no fuel. This is why people who train in mindfulness don't eliminate thoughts, they eliminate suffering. They break the emotional link between the thought and their reaction. And once you break that link, a thought becomes what it has always been, a temporary mental event with no substance. Here's the part that will change your life if you take it seriously. You don't need to fight anxiety. You just need to stop feeding it. Every time you stop attaching to a thought, especially at night, you weaken the pattern. You're training your brain to stop using anxiety as its default operating mode. Over time, the mind learns that worrying thoughts aren't effective anymore. They stop coming with the same intensity. Eventually, they barely show up at all. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't affirmations. This isn't suppressing thoughts. This is mental discipline, real mental discipline. It's the difference between drowning in your mind and mastering it. Breaking attachment is the moment you stop being held hostage by your thoughts. It's the moment you realize anxiety isn't some invincible force. It's just your mind looking for attention. And once you stop giving it that attention, the entire cycle collapses. Master this lesson, and the rest of the Buddhist technique becomes 10 times easier. Because once thoughts stop controlling you, anxiety has nothing left to stand on. 3. Returning to the breath with precision. People love to pretend they meditate or focus on their breath, but let's be honest, most people do it sloppily. They breathe without awareness, drift off into thoughts, and then wonder why it isn't working. Buddhism doesn't treat the breath as some vague relaxation tool. It treats it as a weapon, a razor-sharp anchor that cuts through mental chaos and drags your mind out of the anxiety spiral with brutal efficiency. Here's the truth. Your breath is the only thing happening in the present moment that you can actually feel, control, and follow. Your thoughts pull you into the past or future. Your emotions drag you all over the place. But your breath, it's always here, always happening, always accessible. That's why monks use it as the primary method for stabilizing the mind. Not because it's spiritual, but because it's reliable and brutally honest. The breath doesn't lie, doesn't dramatize, doesn't catastrophize. It's the perfect counterattack to anxiety. But you need to understand something. The Buddhist approach to breathing is not casual. It's not just notice your breath or take a few deep breaths. It's precise, intentional, and disciplined. The breath becomes your anchor, not a soft pillow to relax into, but a strong chain that pulls your mind out of its self-destructive loops. The first step is developing full awareness of the inhale. Not a half-second glance, not a vague sense of breath moving, full awareness. You feel the air entering your nose. You feel the coolness at the tip of your nostrils. You feel your chest or belly expand. You ride the inhale from the first millisecond to the very last. This level of attention forces the mind into the present moment. The mind cannot wander and focus this precisely at the same time. Anxiety can't run in the background while you're locked into the breath with full awareness. Then comes the exhale. Same precision. You follow it all the way down, noticing how it softens the body, how it warms the nose on the way out, how the muscles loosen. The breath becomes a cycle you are fully inside, not observing from a distance. This is the difference between trying to breathe mindfully and actually doing it correctly. Precision is what strips your attention away from anxious thinking. Precision is what prevents your mind from drifting into loops. Precision is what shuts down the overthinking habit. But the most powerful part of the Buddhist technique is this: noticing the exact point where the inhale turns into the exhale. That microscopic shift, barely a second, is where the mind becomes still. It's where monks find silence effortlessly. That little pause contains more peace than most people experience in a week. Why does this matter? Because anxiety is momentum. It needs your mind to keep moving, keep analyzing, keep fearing, keep predicting. When you focus on the breath so precisely that you catch the moment it reverses direction, you break the momentum, you interrupt the cycle. You create a crack in the wall of mental noise, and in that crack, calm enters naturally, not forced, not visualized, real calm. And here's the part most people never understand. Returning to the breath isn't about controlling your breathing, it's about controlling your attention. The breath is simply the object you train your attention with. Every time your mind wanders, and it will, constantly you pull it back to the breath, not with frustration, not with judgment, but with firmness. The return is the practice. The return is the training. The return is where your mind learns who's in charge. For most people, the mind wanders, and they follow it like a lost puppy. In Buddhist practice, the mind wanders, and you snap it back, over and over. That repetition is what rewires your brain. That is how monks develop mental stability that most people can't even imagine. They're not calm because life is easier for them. They're calm because they've spent thousands of hours dragging their attention back to the breath every time their mind tries to escape. And at night, when anxious thoughts start multiplying, this skill becomes your lifeline. You don't argue with thoughts. You don't try to think positive. You don't try to suppress anything. You return again and again to the breath with absolute precision. You watch your mind try to escape. You watch it try to pull you into fear. But you keep returning. That return is how you starve anxiety. It's how you drain the energy out of overthinking. It's how you re-establish control when your mind tries to run wild. Eventually, something predictable happens. The thoughts weaken, they slow down, they lose their urgency. Not because they've disappeared, they may still pop up, but because you're not feeding them. You're not attaching to them. Your attention is elsewhere. Your breath becomes your new home, your new center of gravity, your refuge. When you practice returning to the breath with this level of precision, you learn something profound. The mind can only chase one thing at a time. If you're fully locked into the breath, you cannot simultaneously be obsessed with anxious thoughts. It's impossible. The brain doesn't multitask the way people think it does. It switches rapidly. Your job is to stop letting it switch. Keep it rooted in the breath, and anxiety can't dominate you. This is not magic. This is discipline. And it works every single time, if you actually commit to it, instead of doing the lazy, half-focused version most people attempt. When done correctly, returning to the breath becomes the single most effective tool for calming nighttime anxiety. It pulls you out of your head and into your body. It interrupts the mental loops. It slows the nervous system. It shifts your attention from fear to presence. Master this lesson, and your mind begins to obey you instead of dragging you around like a hostage. It's one of the core pillars of Buddhist mental training because it delivers results, not in months immediately. The moment you anchor your mind to the breath with precision, the storm inside begins to settle. 4. Releasing the day, instead of carrying it. Most people don't realize how much they drag the weight of their day into the night. You think you're going to bed. What you're actually doing is taking every argument, every mistake, every embarrassing moment, every unfinished task, every worry about tomorrow, and piling it onto your chest as you lie down. No wonder you can't sleep. You're trying to rest while carrying an entire day's worth of mental baggage. Buddhism saw this problem clearly, and instead of pretending this stress magically disappears, it teaches you to close the day before you enter the night. In simple terms, monks don't sleep with unfinished emotional business. You do. And that's why they sleep peacefully while your brain treats 11 p.m. like a crisis meeting. You need to understand something clearly. The human mind hates loose ends. If there's something unresolved, an awkward conversation, a mistake you made, a task you didn't complete, a fear about tomorrow, the mind will keep poking at it. That's what creates anxiety at night. When there's silence, the mind brings back every loose end because it wants closure, not because it's trying to ruin your night, but because that's how the mind works. It loops until something feels settled. The Buddhist approach is brutally practical. You close the loop yourself. You don't wait for the day to resolve itself. You don't wait for perfection. You don't wait for everything to make sense. You end the day consciously, intentionally, and completely. How do monks do this? Through a simple but powerful practice. They mentally review the day, not to judge it, not to obsess over it, but to acknowledge it and release it. They look at what happened, recognize what they did well, recognize what they could do better, and then they put the day down like setting a heavy bag on the ground. That's the part you don't do. You carry the bag into bed and wonder why your body feels heavy and your mind feels loud. Let's break this down clearly. You cannot change anything that already happened. The day is over. The conversations are over. The mistakes are over. The arguments are over. The wins and losses are over. None of it can be altered at midnight. But your mind acts as if thinking about it will magically rewrite it. It won't. It only agitates your nervous system and fuels anxiety. Buddhism forces you to accept the most important fact of the night. The day is finished, and its consequences are no longer in your control. This is not avoidance, it's closure. It's acknowledging reality. Dwelling on the day is fantasy disguised as responsibility. The mind tricks you into thinking replaying things is productive. It isn't. It's emotional self-torture. The moment you consciously release the day, everything changes. Instead of letting your mind bombard you with thoughts, you take responsibility for ending the mental momentum. You signal to your brain, "We're done. The day is offline. Nothing more to think about." Once the mind receives that message, your nervous system finally gets permission to unwind. But here's the part that makes this practice so effective. When you intentionally release the day, you stop your mind from dragging it into tomorrow. That's where most people destroy their sleep. They not only relive the day, they start rehearsing the next one. Anxiety doubles, thoughts accelerate, and the night becomes a battlefield of past and future colliding. Monks don't allow that collision. When the day ends, they cut the connection cleanly. That's why their minds settle quickly. There is nothing to analyze, nothing to project, nothing to fix. The day is complete in their mind, even if it wasn't perfect. You need this same discipline, especially if you're someone who struggles to sleep. This isn't optional. It's the difference between a quiet mind and a chaotic one. To release the day, you have to be honest. You have to acknowledge everything without sugarcoating it or dramatizing it. You accept the good and the bad with equal clarity. You mentally say, "This happened. I accept it. It is done." Once you do that, the mind relaxes because it's been heard. The mind only keeps repeating something because you haven't acknowledged it. Once it's acknowledged, it stops knocking. Think about how your brain responds when you ignore notifications. Eventually, it gets louder, more intrusive, more reactive. Your mind works the same way. The moment you stop running from the content of your day and actually face it, the repetition stops. That's closure. That's release. Another key point: releasing the day prevents you from carrying emotional residue into sleep. Emotional residue is the leftover tension, irritation, guilt, worry, and pressure that sticks to you because you never processed it. It stays in your body, your shoulders tighten, your chest feels heavy, your stomach knots up. If you don't intentionally wipe this residue away, it follows you into the night and makes your body think you're still in danger. That's exactly what triggers nighttime anxiety. When monks release the day, they release the emotions attached to it. They don't pretend the day was perfect. They don't deny their feelings. They let the feelings exist, acknowledge them, and then let them dissolve. And once the emotional weight is gone, the mind naturally becomes quiet. Here's the takeaway you need to absorb. If you don't release the day will release itself through anxiety. It will leak out through racing thoughts, tight muscles, stress dreams, and panic. You can deal with the day, consciously or unconsciously, but either way, your mind will try to process it. Doing it consciously is smarter, faster, cleaner, and far more peaceful. Releasing the day isn't some mystical ritual, it's mental hygiene. It's cleaning your mind before bed the same way you brush your teeth. You wouldn't sleep with dirt in your mouth. Stop trying to sleep with chaos in your mind. Master this practice, and nighttime anxiety begins to collapse. The mind quiets because it no longer has unfinished business to gnaw on. The body relaxes because it's no longer bracing for what might happen next. And sleep becomes natural instead of a nightly battle. This is how Buddhists create mental calm before bed. Not by accident, not by hoping, but by consciously letting go of everything the day left behind. 5. Relaxing the body to quiet the mind. Most people think anxiety starts in the mind and then spreads to the body. They've got it backwards. A huge amount of anxiety actually begins in the body: tight muscles, shallow breathing, clenched jaw, elevated heart rate, and the mind simply reacts to those signals. Your brain senses the tension and interprets it as danger, so it starts firing anxious thoughts to match the physical state you're in. That's why Buddhism emphasizes something most modern people overlook. If you don't calm the body, you will never calm the mind, ever. You can sit there trying to think calm, be present, or stop worrying, but if your shoulders are tight, your chest is constricted, your stomach is knotted, and your nervous system is still running on survival mode, your mind has no reason to relax. Your body is telling your brain, "We're in danger." Your brain listens. This is why anxiety at night feels so intense. Your body is still in a tense, activated, overstimulated state while you're forcing your mind into silence. That clash is what creates the mental hurricane. Buddhism treats the body and mind as one system. The mind influences the body, yes, but the body also controls the mind. Monks understand this deeply, which is why they always relax the body first. They don't attempt meditation or deep sleep until their physical state has shifted into ease. This isn't optional, it's foundational. A tense body guarantees a busy mind. A relaxed body creates the conditions for peace. Here's the problem. Most people carry tension they don't even notice. Your neck stiffens from stress and you call it normal. Your back tightens from worry and you think it's just how you sit. Your stomach clenches from anxiety and you label it, "My digestion sucks." You normalize physical tension until it becomes invisible, but it's running your life and it's ruining your nights. Buddhism forces you to see that tension for what it is: stored emotion. Every argument you didn't express fully, every fear you suppressed, every thought you resisted, every moment you pretended you were fine when you weren't. The body holds all of it. And when night comes, that stored tension acts like a magnet that pulls anxious thoughts toward it. Your body screams, "We're not safe," and your mind rushes to explain why. You mistake those explanations for real problems, but they're just your brain reacting to the state of your nervous system. This is why relaxing your body before bed is not some spa-like self-care suggestion. It's a requirement if you want a quiet mind. You can't outthink a tense body. You have to release the tension physically. Monks use a very deliberate process, a slow, intentional scan from head to toe, not the watered-down body scan people talk about on wellness apps. A real one, a disciplined one. They bring full awareness to each part of the body, not to judge it, but to feel the tension that's hiding there. The moment you shine attention on a tense area, it starts to release automatically. Why? Because tension thrives on unconsciousness. When you're unaware of it, it holds you. When you become fully aware of it, you hold it. You start with the face. Most people don't realize how much anxiety they store in their jaw, around their eyes, across their forehead. Relaxing the face alone can drop your stress level instantly because the face is directly wired to the nervous system. When the face softens, the brain receives a signal. We're okay. Then the shoulders, the place where everyone carries the weight of their day. They rise, tighten, and lock into place as if preparing for impact. Dropping the shoulders, loosening the traps, opening the chest. This tells your body the threat has passed. Then the stomach. Anxiety loves to live here. Your stomach tightens when you're scared, stressed, guilty, overwhelmed. This is why monks keep the belly soft and open. A relaxed stomach signals to the nervous system that you're safe enough to rest. A tight stomach signals danger, and your mind responds accordingly. Legs, back, hands, feet, you scan everything. Not rushing, not forcing relaxation, just noticing. Awareness alone softens the tension the same way heat melts ice. The body wants to relax. You've just never given it permission. And here's the key point most people miss. When the body relaxes, the breath deepens naturally. You don't have to force it. Your breath shifts from short and shallow, which triggers anxiety, to slow and full, which calms the nervous system. This creates a chain reaction. Deep breath, relaxed body, quieter mind, deeper breath, more relaxation, more calm. This is why monks appear effortlessly peaceful. It's not magic, it's physical discipline. They maintain a relaxed body so the mind doesn't have to fight against tension. You, on the other hand, spend your day accumulating tension like debt and expect your mind to magically shut up at night. That's not how biology works. If your body is tight, your mind will stay loud. Period. When you fully grasp this, you stop treating relaxation like an optional add-on and start treating it like a nightly ritual. You scan, you release, you soften. Not in a lazy way, but in an intentional, focused way. You empty the physical weight so the mind doesn't have to carry it. Once the body quiets, you'll notice something profound. The mind stops fighting. Anxiety stops demanding attention. Thoughts lose their edge. It's not that the mind has stopped thinking, you've just removed the physical conditions that were supporting anxious thinking. The truth is simple and brutal. A tense body creates anxious thoughts. A relaxed body creates peaceful thoughts. And if you want deep sleep, you need the second one. Master this lesson, and you stop sabotaging yourself. You stop going to bed with a body still stuck in the stress of the day. You stop giving anxiety the physical fuel it needs to survive. You learn how to put your body into a state where the mind finally has permission to shut the hell up. And when the body truly relaxes, sleep isn't something you chase, it's something that happens on its own. 6. Using compassion to disarm fear. Most people misunderstand compassion. They think it's soft, sentimental, or overly gentle. They imagine monks sitting around smiling at butterflies. That's not compassion, that's fantasy. Real compassion, the kind Buddhism teaches, is a psychological weapon. It's how you shut down fear at its core. It's how you stop the internal war you've been waging against yourself for years. And when it comes to nighttime anxiety, compassion is the move that flips the entire game. Let's get brutally honest. Most of your anxiety isn't caused by external problems. It's caused by the way you treat yourself when those problems arise. You feel fear, and instead of meeting it with clarity, you judge yourself for it. You get anxious, and then you get anxious about being anxious. You feel overwhelmed, and then you shame yourself for being weak. This creates a loop of self-attack that your nervous system interprets as danger. Here's the truth you need to swallow. You're not scared of your thoughts. You're scared of your reaction to them. Fear itself doesn't destroy you. Your hostility toward fear does. You meet every uncomfortable emotion with resistance, and resistance is the fuel that keeps anxiety alive. Buddhism cuts through this cycle by teaching you something counterintuitive but life-changing. Instead of fighting fear, you meet it with compassion, not pity, not softness, not avoidance. Compassion meaning you stop attacking your own mind, you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you stop treating normal human emotions like punishable offenses, you stop escalating your inner experience into a battlefield. Why does this work? Because fear cannot survive in the presence of compassion. They're incompatible states. Fear tightens, compassion softens. Fear contracts, compassion opens. Fear says something is wrong with you. Compassion says you're struggling, and that's okay. The panic drops because the internal enemy disappears. You stop being at war with yourself. Think about the last time you felt anxiety at night. What did you do? You probably tried to suppress it. You tried to get rid of it. You told yourself, "Why am I like this?" You got frustrated. You criticized your mind for being noisy. You worried that your anxiety was out of control. All of that resistance poured gasoline on the fire. The fear wasn't the problem, your hostility was. Monks treat fear the same way they treat a child crying from a nightmare. They don't yell. They don't shame. They don't try to argue with the fear. They acknowledge it with a calm, steady presence. This is fear. It's okay that it's here. It will pass. That's real compassion. It's not weakness, it's emotional strength. It's what allows the nervous system to settle instead of escalating. When you apply this to your own anxiety, something profound shifts. The moment you stop attacking fear, the fear stops attacking you. Instead of spiraling, you interrupt the loop. Your breath softens. Your muscles relax. Your thoughts lose intensity. Why? Because the body can finally exit survival mode. Compassion is the signal that the threat is gone. Fear only exists to protect you. Once you stop treating your feelings like threats, your body stops treating them like danger. And let's be blunt, you've been gaslighting yourself for years. Every time you tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way, you reinforce the belief that your emotions are wrong. Every time you panic about panicking, you deepen the pattern. Compassion is the antidote. It's the only thing that interrupts this destructive relationship you have with your own mind. Here's the part most people miss. Compassion isn't about making your anxiety disappear. It's about removing the second layer, the suffering you add on top of the anxiety. That second layer is the real problem. The overthinking, the self-criticism, the fear of the fear. Once that layer drops, the anxiety underneath becomes manageable. It fades faster. It becomes less threatening. And often it dissolves on its own. Imagine fear shows up before bed. Instead of tightening, you soften. Instead of fighting, you acknowledge. Instead of spiraling, you breathe. Instead of saying, "Not this again," you say, "I hear you." That single shift completely rewires the moment. Your mind stops trying to protect itself from itself. The internal war ends. And here's the kicker. Compassion builds trust with your own mind. When fear arises and you meet it with understanding, your mind learns that it doesn't have to panic to get your attention. It doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to overwhelm you. Over time, your nervous system becomes conditioned to stay calm because the internal environment is no longer hostile. You become a safe place for your own mind. That's what monks master. Not the absence of fear, but a relationship with fear that neutralizes its power. That's why they seem unshakable. They're not fearless, they're not fighting fear. Compassion is what ends the fight. This lesson matters because anxiety before bed is almost always fear magnified by self-judgment. If you remove the judgment, the fear loses its grip. You stop spiraling. You stop overreacting. You stop turning simple thoughts into emotional emergencies. This isn't coddling yourself. It's reclaiming control. It's refusing to let your inner critic run the show. It's choosing to respond to fear with maturity instead of panic. And when you make that shift, your mind finds peace, not because the world is perfect, but because you stopped being your own enemy. Master this, and nighttime anxiety doesn't just shrink, it starts dissolving the moment it appears. 7. Surrendering control and trusting impermanence. This is the lesson most people resist the hardest, and it's exactly why they stay trapped in anxiety every night. Anxiety is, at its core, an obsession with control. Control over outcomes, control over the future, control over how people see you, control over what might go wrong. And the harder you try to control everything, the more your mind spirals. Buddhism tears this illusion apart with one of its most powerful teachings. Everything is impermanent. Everything rises, everything falls, everything changes. Nothing stays exactly as it is, not your emotions, not your problems, not your thoughts, not your fears. When you cling to control in a world that's constantly shifting, you suffer. It's that simple. At night, the need to control becomes suffocating. With nothing left to distract you, your mind tries to plan, predict, analyze, and rehearse the future. It tries to fix things that haven't even happened. It tries to mentally grab onto something solid so it can feel safe. But the future is not something you can grip. It's fluid, uncertain, alive. And your mind can't tolerate that uncertainty, so it invents fear. It creates scenarios. It plays out disasters. It convinces you that worrying is a form of preparation. But all you're doing is tightening your grip on something you will never control. Buddhism teaches that suffering begins the moment you try to make life obey your expectations. Anxiety is the emotional cost of fighting reality. You're trying to force stability where stability doesn't exist. You're trying to create guarantees where none are possible. That's why nighttime anxiety feels relentless. Your mind is wrestling with the truth that it cannot control the next hour, the next day, or the next outcome. And instead of accepting that, you try harder. You think more. You stress more. You stay awake trying to prepare for every possible threat. You exhaust yourself trying to prevent uncertainty. You fail every time. And then you call that failure anxiety. Surrendering control doesn't mean giving up. It means being honest about what you can influence and what you can't. It means accepting that the world isn't supposed to bend to your fears. It means letting go of the illusion that thinking harder will protect you. Here's the truth you've avoided. Anxiety isn't a sign of danger. It's a sign that you're trying to control the uncontrollable. Monks understand this deeply. They face uncertainty every day, but instead of fighting it, they align with it. They trust impermanence. They trust the natural rise and fall of experience. They trust that emotions, fears, and thoughts come and go on their own. They don't cling. They don't resist. They don't try to freeze life into a perfect, predictable shape. They surrender not out of weakness, but out of clarity. When something arises in their mind, fear, worry, doubt, they don't tighten up and panic. They don't demand answers. They let it be. They know it will pass because everything passes. That certainty gives them peace. You don't have that peace because you don't trust the nature of experience. You treat every fear like it's permanent. You treat every worry like it's a prophecy. You treat every thought like it's urgent. You forget that everything you feel is temporary. Think about your past. Every fear you once had eventually faded. Every worry dissolved. Every emotional storm passed. Every crisis settled. But you forget this the moment a new fear arrives. You tell yourself, this one is different. This time it's real. It never is. It just feels real in the moment because you're trying to control it. Surrendering control is the act of loosening your grip on every imagined scenario. It's the willingness to let life unfold without forcing it. It's the choice to stop rehearsing outcomes you cannot influence at 2 a.m. When you surrender, the mind stops fighting. When the mind stops fighting, anxiety loses oxygen. It can't breathe without resistance. Here's a truth that hits hard. Anxiety is your mind trying to do a job it was never designed to do. Control the future. That's why it fails. That's why it panics. That's why it keeps you awake. When you surrender control, you free your mind from an impossible task. You let it return to what it's actually built for, experiencing the present moment. But surrender is not passive. It's an active choice to stop gripping the ungrippable. It's saying, I don't know what will happen, and I don't need to know right now. It's acknowledging that thinking about tomorrow while you're lying in bed does nothing but damage your peace. Impermanence is the backbone of this lesson. When you truly grasp it, anxiety becomes less convincing. You start to see fear as temporary. You start to see thoughts as temporary. You start to see emotions as temporary. You stop treating every feeling like a forever state. That alone removes the urgency from anxiety. Now, here's the shift that really matters. When you trust impermanence, you stop panicking about how you feel. You don't need your anxiety to disappear instantly. You don't need answers right away. You don't need certainty to be okay. You ride the wave instead of drowning in it. You stop adding fear to fear. And ironically, that's exactly what makes the anxiety dissolve faster. Monks aren't calm because they have nothing to worry about. They're calm because they don't cling to the need for things to be certain. They allow life to be unpredictable. They allow emotions to come and go. They allow thoughts to rise and pass without trying to control the process. That surrender is what keeps their minds quiet. You can't force your mind to sleep. You can't force your anxiety to disappear. You can only stop feeding the illusion of control that keeps the anxiety alive. When you surrender, the mind finally gets the message. We don't need to fight. We don't need to predict. We don't need to solve life at midnight. You're safe enough to rest, not because the future is guaranteed, but because you're no longer trying to control it. Master this lesson, and anxiety loses its deepest root. You stop living like the world is a threat you must anticipate. You stop trying to outthink uncertainty. You stop gripping life with white knuckles. You let go, not carelessly, but consciously. And in that letting go, the mind finally exhales. If you've made it this far, you've probably noticed something. None of these teachings are about escaping your mind. None of them promise a life without fear or stress. Buddhism doesn't give you shortcuts, magic words, or quick fixes. What it gives you is something far more valuable: clarity. The clarity to understand your mind instead of being bullied by it. The clarity to break the habits that keep your anxiety alive. The clarity to stop feeding the thoughts that steal your sleep. And if you actually apply these lessons, not half-heartedly, not once in a while, but consistently, your entire relationship with nighttime anxiety changes. You stop running from your thoughts. You stop believing every fear your mind throws at you. You stop carrying the emotional weight of the day into the night. You stop tightening your body until your mind thinks you're in danger. You stop attacking yourself when fear shows up. And you stop trying to control a future that was never yours to control in the first place. When all of that drops, what's left is the thing you've been chasing for years: peace. Not the fake peace where you distract yourself until you pass out. Not the fragile peace that shatters the second a new worry appears. Real peace, the kind monks talk about. The kind that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances. The kind that lives underneath the noise when you stop feeding the noise. Nighttime anxiety has never been the enemy. The real enemy has always been your reaction to it. Your habits, your resistance, your attachment, your need for control. Buddhism doesn't fix your anxiety for you. It teaches you how to stop making it worse. It teaches you how to step out of the mental storms instead of standing in the center of them. It teaches you how to let the mind do what the mind does without letting it dictate your life. And when you understand that, when you practice these 7 lessons with intention and discipline, something shifts. The nights get quieter. Your thoughts lose their pull. Fear becomes manageable instead of overwhelming. Sleep stops being a battle and becomes something natural again. Your mind isn't broken. You're not doomed to overthink forever. You've just been using the wrong strategy. Now you have a better one. Apply these teachings, and you'll discover for yourself what monks have known for thousands of years. The mind isn't the enemy, it's the student. And when you train it correctly, it finally learns how to rest.